So imagine you are stepping out to your detached garage workshop. It's a brutal, like 6-degree morning in January.
Oh, that is definitely not a fun morning to be out there.
Right. You are all bundled up. Your breath is pluming in the air. But, you aren't really worried about it.
Because you've got that brand new setup.
Exactly. Just a few months ago, you installed this brand new $1,800 mini-split heat pump. You point the remote, you flip the switch, and nothing happens.
Oh, no. The worst case scenario.
Yeah, it is like 38 degrees inside that room.
Yeah.
Your expensive paints are ruined, the wood glues are frozen solid, and your brand new climate control system is just, well, completely locked up.
It is a terrible feeling. And I mean, it happens far more often than people realize, mostly simply because they bought the completely wrong machine for the wrong job.
Which brings us to a scenario that you, the listener, have probably found yourself in. You walk into a big box store, maybe like a Costco, to just buy paper towels or whatever.
As you do.
Right. But suddenly, you are staring at this massive palleted display of mini-split air conditioners.
Yeah.
And printed right there on the cardboard is this unbelievably tempting price tag.
It's always the price tag that gets you to stop walking.
Oh, for sure. It's an ACiQ brand, 24,000 BTU unit for like about $1,800.
Which is an incredibly appealing number for that amount of heating and cooling power.
Yeah, and just to define that term really quickly for everyone, a BTU, or British thermal unit, is essentially the muscle power of the system.
Right. It's just the measure of how much heat energy the unit can actively move in an hour.
Exactly. And 24,000 is a very solid, capable size. You could do a large workshop or even a basement with that.
You absolutely could. It's a lot of capacity.
But then, you do the responsible thing. You call up a local installer and ask for a quote on a premium name brand unit, like a Mitsubishi, of that exact same 24,000 BTU size.
And prepare for the sticker shock.
Seriously. The quote comes back at over $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
It is this massive, glaring gap in price.
It really makes you second-guess everything.
It does. It immediately sparks this suspicion, like, is this just a brand name markup? Are you basically just paying for the Mitsubishi logo glued onto the plastic casing? Or is there an actual, genuine physical difference in the hardware?
That really is the ultimate consumer dilemma, isn't it? We are constantly conditioned to look for the life hack or the budget alternative.
Because we just assumed the core technology is completely identical underneath.
Exactly. We think a compressor is a compressor.
Well, to get to the bottom of this, the mission of our deep dive today is to actually decode the engineering spec sheets.
Yes. Let's get into the actual numbers.
We have gotten our hands on these incredible detailed field notes from a master HVAC installer. This guy has 45 years of experience specifically dealing with these exact units in central Oklahoma.
Which is a region that is just notorious for wild, extreme temperature swings. It is the perfect testing ground.
It really is. So we are going to uncover exactly what you're paying for with that premium price tag. And, crucially, when buying that $1,800 budget option is actually the smartest financial choice you can make.
Because if you are planning to, finish a basement or build out a backyard workshop or add some AC to a sunroom, understanding these hidden engineering differences is just absolutely vital.
It could save you thousands of dollars or save you from a freezing, miserable week in January. And to ground this whole technical discussion, we need to talk about the homeowner from our source notes who actually experienced that exact freezing garage scenario I just described.
Ah, yes, the Yukon homeowner.
Right. He lived in Yukon, Oklahoma. Yeah. He had that budget-friendly ACiQ mini-split installed in his detached workshop. And during the summer, the notes say it was fantastic.
Oh, I'm sure it was perfectly fine in July.
Yeah, he was out there working in massive heat waves, perfectly comfortable. But then that sharp 6-degree winter morning hit.
Which, unfortunately, triggered a fatal flaw in his specific budget setup.
What actually happened mechanically?
Well, the heat pump went into what we call defrost mode. When a heat pump runs in the winter, the outdoor unit actually gets freezing cold.
Wait, colder than the outside air?
Yes, exactly. Colder than the outside air. So any ambient condensation turns directly to ice on the metal coils. The machine occasionally has to run in reverse to melt that ice off.
Oh, so it warms itself up for a minute.
Right. But it got so profoundly cold out there that his specific unit got completely stuck in defrost. It turned into a literal block of solid ice and just never recovered.
That is wild. The technical reason his garage turned into an icebox actually comes down to a specific metric. I am looking at the spec sheets right now, and it's called the operating temperature range.
Yes, the most important numbers nobody ever looks at.
Right. It is published on every single document for every unit manufactured.
Hmm.
Why do most homeowners never even hear about this?
Usually it's because the conversation during the quoting process just revolves entirely around square footage and BTUs.
Like, is it big enough for my room?
Exactly. Homeowners want to know if it will cool the room, and installers just want to ensure the unit is sized properly for the load. But that operating temperature range, that dictates the absolute physical limits of the actual machine.
So what happens if you go outside that published window?
Well, these units don't just work a little bit less efficiently. They will either completely shut themselves down to protect the electronics, or they run severely deaerated.
Meaning what, they just trickle out heat?
Yeah, they output a tiny, tiny fraction of the heat you actually need to survive. Or worse, they run in this panicked, stressed state that just slowly destroys their own internal compressors over time.
Okay, so understanding why that Yukon homeowner froze requires us to do a direct side-by-side comparison of those extreme temperature ratings.
Yeah.
Let's look at the ACiQ and the Mitsubishi.
Let's start with the heating lows, because that is where the most dramatic difference really jumps right off the page.
Okay, the ACiQ's published heating range bottoms out at 5 degrees Fahrenheit. If the temperature drops below that, it basically gives up.
Right. And it's important to note that a standard Mitsubishi inverter unit, like their base model, also bottoms out at 5 degrees.
Really? So the base models are kind of the same there.
Yes. But their premium line, the Mitsubishi Hyperheat, that one is rated to operate all the way down to minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, so that is an 18-degree difference in extreme cold weather capability.
It is. And even more importantly, we really have to look at what happens to the machine before it hits that bottom number.
What do you mean?
Well, the Mitsubishi Hyperheat doesn't just barely survive down to 5 degrees. It maintains 100% of its fully rated heating capacity at that temperature.
Wow, really? 100%?
Yeah. And even when the thermometer plunges all the way down to minus 13, it is still pumping out 76% of its heating capacity.
Okay, hold on. Let me challenge this a little bit. 18 degrees of buffer on the extreme low end is definitely impressive, but for double the price.
I know, it sounds steep.
I am looking at the historical weather data for central Oklahoma from our source notes. It says temperatures hit 5 degrees or colder for about 35 hours a year on average.
Yeah, that's historically accurate.
And they drop to 0 or below for only about 8 hours a year.
Huh.
So why on earth would I pay a $2,000 premium for like 35 hours of weather? Out of nearly 9,000 hours an entire year? That seems completely insignificant to me.
Statistically, I agree, it is just a blip. But if we connect this to the reality of how you actually use a physical space, those specific 35 hours carry massive stakes.
At the garage freezing.
Exactly. If that mini split is the only source of heat for a guest house or a finished basement or a workshop that has active plumbing in the walls.
Oh, the plumbing.
Right. Those 35 hours are the exact moments when your pipes burst. It is when a living space becomes totally uninhabitable.
So it's not about comfort, it's about disaster prevention.
Exactly. You aren't paying that premium for the pleasant, 60-degree autumn days. You are paying a one-time insurance premium to guarantee survival during those specific 35 hours of extreme stress.
Okay, I definitely see the value as an insurance policy. But if I am paying this much extra money, I need to know what that hardware is actually doing.
Let's get under the hood then.
Yeah. How do you get heat out of air that is literally 5 degrees? We might need a quick crash course in thermodynamics here because, frankly, it just sounds like magic.
It totally sounds like magic, but it's actually just brilliant physics. First, we have to remember that heat pumps do not create heat the way a traditional gas furnace or an electric space heater does.
Because those actually burn fuel or use giant heating elements.
Exactly. Heat pumps don't burn anything. They just move heat from one place to another. And even when it is 5 degrees outside, there is still actual heat energy in the ambient air.
That is so counterintuitive. 5 degrees feels like there is zero heat out there.
To a human body, yes, it feels freezing. But absolute zero, which is the physical point where there is truly no heat energy left in the universe, is minus 460 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective.
Right. So at 5 degrees above zero, there is actually plenty of heat energy floating around in the air. The trick is just capturing it.
And how do they do that?
Heat pumps use a chemical refrigerant that boils at incredibly, unbelievably low temperatures.
Okay.
As that liquid boils, it absorbs that ambient heat from the freezing outside air. And then the compressor physically squeezes that resulting gas to concentrate the heat, and it pumps it inside your house.
Got it. And this is where the term inverter compressor comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because the spec sheets boast about inverters for both of these brands.
Yes, exactly. Older, traditional air conditioners were what we call single stage.
Meaning they were just on or off.
Yep. They banged on at 100% power, loudly cooled the room, and then banged off. But an inverter compressor is essentially a variable speed drive.
Oh, like a dimmer switch on a dining room light?
Perfect analogy. Or like the gas pedal on a car, it can ramp up to 100% when you need to cool down a hot room really quickly, or it can dial back to 20% just to maintain the room temperature quietly and efficiently.
Okay, I get the basic mechanism of moving the heat around. But at 5 degrees outside, getting enough heat to warm a whole 2-car garage, it kind of feels like trying to wring water out of a completely dry sponge.
That is a brilliant way to picture it, actually. And that dry sponge scenario is exactly why the budget ACiQ and the standard Mitsubishi fail when it gets that profoundly cold.
Because there's not enough moisture, or in this case, heat, to wring out.
Right. The ambient air is so incredibly cold that the refrigerant vapor loses its pressure. The standard compressor physically cannot squeeze that thin, low-pressure gas hard enough to extract any meaningful amount of heat.
So what does the premium Mitsubishi Hyperheat do differently then? How does it manage to wring out the dry sponge?
The Hyperheat utilizes what is officially called a vapor injection inverter compressor.
Vapor injection. That sounds intense.
It is. Think of it like adding a turbocharger to a car engine.
Okay, I can picture that.
When a car drives up a really high mountain, the air gets very thin, right? And the engine starts losing power. A turbocharger fixes this by violently forcing compressed air back into the engine, restoring its power.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, vapor injection does the exact same thing for the heat pump.
Huh.
Halfway through the normal compression cycle, it injects a secondary shot of mid-pressure refrigerant vapor directly into the scroll of the compressor.
So it artificially forces the system pressure back up.
Precisely. It gives the compressor the sheer mechanical muscle to squeeze that dry sponge much, much harder than a standard unit ever could.
It's basically mechanically forcing the system to pull useful heating work out of dangerously thin air.
That's exactly it. But as you might guess, engineering a compressor that can safely handle that mid-cycle injection and all the extra internal plumbing required to make it work costs roughly twice as much to manufacture.
Ah. So that is where the bulk of the extra $1,600 or $2,000 is going. It is not just a fancy brand name. It is fundamentally different, heavier-duty hardware under the hood.
Yes, the compressor is the heart of it. But the rest of that premium price tag also pays for highly sophisticated defrost cycling logic.
Which is the exact thing that would have prevented the outdoor unit in Yukon from turning into a block of ice.
Exactly. It also pays for heavier, thicker insulation inside the outdoor cabinet, tighter quality control during the factory assembly, and internal sensors that intentionally throttle the machine to prevent it from destroying itself when the weather turns hostile.
Okay, so if I am buying a literally turbocharged compressor for the winter, I naturally assume it's going to absolutely dominate the budget brand when it comes to cooling my space during a blazing summer heat wave too.
That would make sense, wouldn't it?
Does that massive premium buy me a better summer air conditioner?
Surprisingly, no. It is actually a fascinating contradiction in the spec sheets.
Let me look at the cooling highs on these sheets. The premium Mitsubishi maxes out its cooling operation at 115 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
But the budget ACiQ model from Costco cools effectively all the way up to 122 degrees. The budget machine has a significantly wider operating range on the high side. How does that make any sense?
It is incredibly counterintuitive, I know. But let's consult that Oklahoma climate data again.
Okay, let's see. In a typical year, they hit 105 degrees about 12 days a year.
Yep.
They hit 110 degrees maybe 2 days a year.
Yeah.
And they only see 115 degrees about once every 5 years.
So the Mitsubishi hitting its absolute operational ceiling at 115 isn't a constant everyday threat, but during a really bad heat wave, it is definitely uncomfortably close to the red line.
Right.
Now, a professional installer doesn't size a unit based solely on the absolute extreme outdoor temperature anyway. They calculate what is called the heat load of the physical space.
So that's not just square footage.
No, they factor in the square footage, yes, but also how much insulation you have in the walls, the quality of the windows, and how much direct blazing sunlight the room gets during the day.
Okay, that makes sense.
If the heat load is calculated correctly, both the Mitsubishi and the ACiQ will definitely keep you cool. However, on those most brutal, record-breaking summer afternoons, the budget ACiQ actually has more mechanical headroom.
Because of that 122-degree ceiling.
Exactly. It won't have to dimmerate its cooling capacity as early, whereas a standard Mitsubishi might bump up against its operational ceiling and start really struggling to keep up with the thermostat.
Wow. So we have kind of solved the engineering mystery here. The premium price buys you absolute winter survival, while the budget unit holds its own or even wins out in the extreme summer heat.
That's the technical reality, yes.
But upfront cost is really only one part of the equation here.
Yeah.
Because eventually mechanical things break, whether it's an $1,800 unit or a $4,000 unit, a fan motor or a sensor is going to fail.
Inevitably, everything breaks eventually. And this is where the hidden long-term costs of budget equipment really start to reveal themselves.
Let's look at dealer support and supply chain realities. Our source notes show that Mitsubishi offers a really robust 12-year warranty.
Which is excellent.
But it's not just the length of the warranty that matters, right? It is the vast infrastructure standing behind it. They have a massive established dealer network. Pretty much any NATE certified technician knows exactly how to work on one.
And let me just clarify what NATE certified means for anyone unfamiliar.
Please do.
The North American Technician Excellence Certification is essentially the gold standard in the HVAC world. It means you aren't just getting, a random guy with a wrench. You are getting a highly trained diagnostic specialist.
Oh, I like that. The equivalent of a board-certified surgeon for your climate control.
Basically, yeah. And because Mitsubishi is so ubiquitous in the industry, those technicians already know the specific diagnostic trees for these units by heart.
They know exactly what's wrong as soon as they open it up.
Right. And even better, if a logic board or a fan motor fails, the local supply houses usually have it sitting right there in stock on a shelf, or they can get it shipped overnight from a regional hub.
So your downtime in a weather emergency is measured in hours or maybe a couple of days at the absolute most.
Exactly.
Now let's contrast that with the ACiQ. It is a Costco imported brand. Now, to be fair to them, when you register the unit properly, it carries a very respectable 7-year parts warranty.
Yeah, they aren't some shady fly-by-night operation.
Right. But the actual dealer network on the ground in your town is incredibly thin.
Which carries a profound real-world consequence for the homeowner. Let's picture our Yukon homeowner again for a second.
Okay.
Imagine his machine didn't freeze into an ice block in January. Imagine it ran perfectly all winter, but then a proprietary circuit board suddenly fries in the middle of a 105-degree July heat wave.
So he calls a local tech out to fix it.
He does. And that tech tells him the replacement board isn't in town. It will actually take 2 to 4 weeks to arrive on a cargo ship from overseas.
Oh, wow. 2 to 4 weeks in July.
It gets worse. Furthermore, some warranty claims on these specific imported brands require the homeowner or the tech to physically box up and ship the failed component back to the manufacturer for evaluation first, before they will even release the replacement part.
Oh, man. That is brutal. So you are directly trading your upfront financial savings for the massive risk of extensive downtime later.
Exactly.
Saving $2,000 in May feels like a brilliant financial move right up until you are sweating through a 3-week wait for a tiny circuit board in the dead of August.
It is a total gamble on the supply chain. The machine itself might operate flawlessly for 99% of its lifespan, but when it doesn't, you just have to accept that you are largely on your own for a while.
All right, let's synthesize all this data into a concrete, practical decision matrix for the listener. Based on the master HVAC installer's notes, how do you actually choose between these tiers?
It really all comes down to how you specifically plan to use the physical space you are outfitting. Let's run through the common scenarios, because the right answer is entirely dictated by the job, not the brand badge printed on the box.
Perfect. Scenario 1. You have a workshop or a detached garage, and you intend to heat it throughout the winter so you can work out there year-round, just like our guy in Yukon.
The recommendation here is firmly the Mitsubishi Hyperheat. As we established earlier, those few dozen hours of sub-5-degree weather are precisely when you are relying on that turbocharged vapor injection compressor.
Right, because if you gamble on a budget model there, it will shut down.
Yes. Your expensive materials will freeze, any plumbing will burst, and you won't be able to use the space at all. In this scenario, the premium price absolutely pays for itself in reliability.
Makes total sense. Okay, scenario 2. You are putting a unit in a detached guest house.
This decision hinges entirely on human occupancy. Are family members, or say Airbnb renters actually going to be sleeping in that guest house during the absolute coldest weeks of January?
Let's say yes, they are.
If the answer is yes, you have to go with the Mitsubishi Hyperheat. You simply cannot have a guest waking up in a dangerously freezing room because the budget heat pump tapped out overnight.
Right, that's a safety issue at that point.
Exactly. However, if it's just an occasional overflow space that sits completely empty for most of the winter, the ACiQ is a perfectly logical, highly economical choice.
Yeah.
Let it shut down for a few hours, it doesn't matter.
Okay, scenario 3. A sunroom or a living space addition that is physically connected to your main house, and you use it year-round, every single day.
If your budget allows for it, go with the Mitsubishi Hyperheat for total peace of mind. But if the budget is a bit tight, a standard Mitsubishi inverter is actually a really smart compromise here.
So you skip the vapor injection.
Right. You lose that extreme sub-zero heating capability, meaning it might get a little chilly in that room on the 5 absolute coldest nights of the year, but you still get the robust dealer network and overnight parts replacement if something suddenly breaks.
A solid middle ground. And finally, scenario 4. Cooling-only applications. We're talking a sunroom you only use in the summer, a garage you just use for storage and need to keep from turning into an oven, or maybe just adding supplemental air conditioning to a hot back bedroom that already gets sufficient heat from your main home's furnace.
Without a doubt, go with the ACiQ in those cases. The cold weather limitations simply do not matter if you aren't relying on it for your primary winter heat.
Right, because you won't even have it turned on in January.
Exactly. And for 95% of the year in places like central Oklahoma, the temperatures sit very comfortably between 25 and 100 degrees anyway.
And in that broad, moderate band of weather, the ACiQ is highly competitive.
It really is. It does the job efficiently, it runs quietly, and it handles the brutal summer heat beautifully. If you aren't relying on the unit for life safety or critical extreme winter heat, buying the ACiQ saves you nearly $2,000 with absolutely zero practical performance loss.
So to just distill this deep dive down to its core takeaway, mini splits are not universally identical boxes of plastic and fans.
They definitely are not.
When you see a massive price jump for a premium tier, you are paying for one highly specific, incredibly sophisticated feat of engineering. A vapor injection compressor designed to extract heat from sub-zero air.
That is the hardware you are buying.
Exactly. And if you go with a standard or a budget model, you just have to accept the physical reality that it will likely shut down when the temperature drops below 5 degrees.
Which is fine as long as you plan for it.
Right. That limitation doesn't make budget imports like the ACiQ inherently bad machines. They are fantastic, money-saving tools, provided you specifically use them for cooling-only or mild shoulder season heating.
It is entirely about matching the tool to the environment.
So next time you are standing in that big box store aisle and that unbelievable price tag catches your eye, look past the marketing cardboard.
Yes, please pull out your phone.
Pull up the actual spec sheet on your phone. Find the line that says operating temperature range and ruthlessly match the capabilities of the equipment to your specific real-world scenario.
Because what seems like an absolute steal of a deal in July could turn into a literal frozen disaster in January if you buy blind.
Being an informed consumer is definitely the best defense against a frozen garage.
It is, and you know, if we connect this whole engineering deep dive to a much broader architectural picture, it really leaves us with a critical thought to mull over.
What's that?
Well, right now, there's this massive societal push to transition our homes entirely away from traditional fossil fuels.
Right, phasing out gas furnaces and relying entirely on electric heat pumps for everything.
Exactly. And as that shift accelerates across the country, if builders and homeowners consistently prioritize budget equipment over extreme weather engineering to save a few bucks up front, we really have to ask ourselves a difficult question.
Which is?
How physically vulnerable are our modern living spaces going to be when those rare but totally inevitable extreme winter weather events strike?
Wow. It is a sobering thought. If your entire house relies on a machine that just throws in the towel at 5 degrees, you don't just have a chilly room. You have a full-blown emergency waiting to happen.
You really do.
You definitely do not want to discover the physical limits of your equipment when the living room is already 38 degrees and dropping fast.
No, you do not.
Well, stay warm out there, everyone, and always trust the spec sheet.